Welcome back to part 3 of Blast to the Past. We're going to talk about some early day announcers that announced at the Costa Mesa Speedway at the revival in 1969. The first announcer at the Costa Mesa Speedway was the legendary Bruce Flanders. Bruce passed away about a year or so ago from a lengthy illness. Rest in peace, Bruce Flanders. Bruce got his first announcing job when he was announcing at the Bonneville Salt Flats. He did a filler job and he started liking the announcing, and Oxley went ahead and asked his father, who was a longtime motorcycle guy. The Flanders had a big reputation in the motorsports world. Asked his dad to announce. His dad had announced in the 1950s when they had Speedway in Los Angeles. And his father said, "No, I'm getting too old." Mr. Flanders just didn't want to announce anymore. And Bruce Flanders, a young Bruce Flanders, said, "I will do it. I can announce. I have that experience over at the Bonneville Salt Flats." So Bruce Flanders was hired by Oxley to be the first announcer at the Costa Mesa Speedway. At the very beginning, they had a co-host, a co-announcer, and that was Mccollum. Mccollum was a speedway racer back in the 30s and 40s. He's an old-timer, and he was an old guy. He lasted like 1 or 2 weeks, and then Bruce Flanders took over the show. It was the summer of '69. 1968, they had the first year of the revival of Speedway at the White Men's Stadium. And in 1969, Harry Oxley and Jack Milne brought Speedway back to Costa Mesa in Orange County. That was it. Bruce Flanders was the opening announcer. For about a year, he was the announcer at Costa Mesa Speedway. He had that deep baritone voice, that banter. He was a good announcer, Bruce Flanders. He was legendary. Later, Bruce announced at all types of motorsports. He was all over the place, not only Speedway. 1969 was the year that Steve Bass won the first United States Speedway Championship at the Costa Mesa Fairgrounds. And Bruce Flanders was the announcer of that event. The first year at the Costa Mesa Speedway was a raging success. They started with 2,000 seats, and they had standing room only around that bull ring at Costa Mesa. And Jack Milne, if this company, kept building more and more stands. And soon there was 6,500 stands, and the people were filling those stands. Bruce Flanders did a splendid job his first year announcing at the Costa Mesa Speedway. However, things took a change the following year in 1970. Bruce Flanders, with his father, had to go to the Bonneville Salt Flats to go do their announcing and go do their racing. I think his dad had a car, one of those motorcycles that was going real fast. So Bruce Flanders left. And in the meantime, Harry Oxley had a problem. He had a dilemma. And he remembered, "Oh, I heard the voice of that guy on the radio, Larry Huffman. He had a lot of commercials. He spoke real fast. He was a supermouth. It was great." And that's what happened. He went ahead and he contacted Larry Huffman. And he asked Larry Huffman, "Would you like to be the announcer of Costa Mesa Speedway?" Oxley and Huffman, they worked out terms for their first year announcing, trial to see how it worked out, and Larry Huffman did a fantastic job. He was great. Larry Huffman was a very exciting announcer. He got the fans charged up. He was really good. And that was the end of Bruce Flanders. He went ahead and did other venues. Larry Huffman took over as the voice of the Costa Mesa Speedway. Speedway at the Costa Mesa Fairgrounds took off with Larry Huffman announcing. They got bigger and bigger, and Speedway entered the heyday. Larry Huffman was the voice of the Costa Mesa Speedway. He was unique and he was dynamic. He spoke like a million words a minute. He was just electrifying. Larry Huffman was one of the greatest announcers ever. And he got those fans excited. Costa Mesa Speedway was blooming. It was the place to be every Friday night. Larry Huffman has a brilliant mind. He was thinking like, how can we get the fans more involved in the Speedway? And he started inventing names for the riders to connect with the fans, the spectators, and that became really successful, really popular. Larry Huffman, he had all kinds of terminology and then nicknames. Larry Huffman had the fans and the riders connected. In Huffman's younger days, he would stand on the platform by the announcer's booth, and when he announced the names of the rider, he would do a hop and he would do the splits and he would announce the name, and it got the crowd electrified. Like I mentioned, he wore that tuxedo. He looked like $1,000,000. He drove a nice sports car too. But when he announced the names, he would get on that platform, he would announce the names, do that hop on that stage, and he would announce the riders. He would have nicknames like the Rocket, Rick Woods, Wild Bill Cody, Danny Berserko Baker, Sliding Sunny Nutter, Big Mike Conley, Sexy Jeff Sexton, Dangerous Doug Farrell, and Billy Gray from Father Knows Best. He played Bud. By giving these riders the nicknames, it was really popular. The people related with the riders. Larry Huffman had a more exciting show he could announce, get those fans electrified in those big main events. It was exciting. Life at the Costa Mesa Speedway on Friday night was the place to be. Larry Huffman has a brilliant mind. He was thinking like, how can we get the fans more involved in the Speedway? And he started inventing names for the riders to connect with the fans, the spectators, and that became really successful, really popular. Larry Huffman, he had all kinds of terminology and then nicknames. Larry Huffman had the fans and the riders connecting. And Larry Huffman, when they had that riders strike back a few years ago at the end of the heyday, Larry Huffman was out on the street on Fair Drive. He was picketing for the Speedway riders. Larry Huffman eventually lost his job as an announcer at the Costa Mesa Speedway, and eventually Terry I. Clapton came in and took his place. It was really exciting. Bruce Flanders went to the Industry Hill Speedway. With his last days, the last years, he was announcing for several years at the Industry Hill Speedway. Bruce Flanders, rest in peace, the first announcer at the Costa Mesa Bull Ring, followed by Larry Huffman in 1970. Both were legendary announcers. Bruce had that banter, and Larry Huffman had that motor mouth. He was so fast, got the crowd electrifying. Both of them will go down in history as the greatest announcers ever. That was a blast from the past. Announcers at the Costa Mesa Speedway.